There are a lot of things that I would have liked to have several more days to cover. The phenomena of epigenetics, where trauma is actually changing the way our DNA is structured. There's what happens in our brain. You know, we actually change the physiology of the brain by meditating. And if I give you a drug and I said, well, this is going to change the physiology of your brain, you probably researched that a lot more than you researched what meditation will do to your brain. So we shouldn't be surprised that there might be some downsides. And we also shouldn't be reluctant to do it, because we take those medications because they're the better alternative. I also didn't talk about Thai's vision that the Sangha would become an organism that was enlightened. That when we sit together, we can hold the space of regulation of the collective if the majority of us, or enough of us, I don't even know that it needs to be a majority, can hold a regulated space in the face of challenge. But once we learn how to do that, and I think this Sangha is really well on its way to being that potential for collective awakening, for collective action. And you get that experience in yourselves of how to treat each other and navigate each other's stuff, and the Sangha politics, which is inevitable. And then you go out and you get engaged in the world, and you take that skill with you, and people are so hungry for that. Dharma sharing guidelines, people don't do that in groups. And then you spend your time learning how to treat each other in the Sangha, and you could be jaw-dropping for how that doesn't exist out there in the world of social change, even, although some places have it. But you could be an ambassador for that. Just like we get dysregulated as individuals, groups get dysregulated as well. And they get that way really fast. If they don't know that one person is dysregulated and they're focusing on them, then they get dysregulated and it snowballs around. Pretty soon you don't have a group that's really wholesome to function with anymore. And I think many organizations now are suffering from waking up, because all they can do is process their awakeness, and they don't have any energy left over to do the job that they come together to do, whether it's racial equity that's egregious in the group, or gender issues, or the whole issue of polarization, where every word that we use in vocabulary has now got a spin on it, if you're one side or another. So it makes it very hard to even open your mouth and say what your heart is feeling. So there's ways for groups to re-regulate themselves, telltale signs of when they are out of their window. And I'm not going to talk about that, but it is in my book. Also to say that what's in my book and what I'm talking about, I did not invent any of it. And I think I said this already, but I want to say it again. You know, I've drawn from so many wise people. Two of the ones that are standing out for me in this moment for this particular talk is Joanna Macy, an incredible, spunky American Buddhist teacher, deep ecologist, contemporary with Katai. She did things like hide herself under sacks of grain and on a wagon drawn by oxen to cross into Tibet. You know, just like, and she developed a thing called the work that reconnects. And it's very interesting to see the parallels. The individual work that we've been doing starts with plucking up those wholesome seeds, finding resources and places in the body that bring a sense of well-being. Joanna starts with that, with gratitude practice, foundation. And then she moves into learning how to hold the pain for the world. And in our individual practice, after we learn to gladden the body and gladden the mind, then we learn to be with it as it is without shying away. And so we learn to stretch that window as wide open as we can, little by little. And when we hold the pain of the world, it's a reciprocal process. We need to become intimate with our world, with the people who are unhoused on the street, rather than giving them something or not watching, to connect, to find out, why are you here? What happened? To connect with people who have losses when we don't know what to say to them, and so we're awkward to shy away. We can develop the courage and the discipline to become intimate with the things that are around us. And when we do that, a caring develops that transcends our fear. That when that caring is so palpable, we just do. We're moved to act. If we're in the window, we act in a way that can be beneficial. So there's grounding in that well-being, and then there's learning how to hold the pain. And once we've learned how to hold the pain, and we begin to get more and more intimate with the ills, we start to see a bigger and bigger and bigger picture of what is really going on. And as that picture grows bigger and bigger, it sucks us into that curiosity, and at some point, some magic happens, and we're moved to do something. And it may come out of nowhere. It isn't like a master plan. It comes out of your love and caring and your ability to hold the pain enough to see exactly how that pain is being constructed, so you know where you are most effective in fixing it. So Joanna calls that step seeing with new eyes. They begin to be the eyes of interbeing. And we don't stop with people. We try to see through the eyes of the mountains and the trees and the birds and the sludge. We look through the eyes of history. And we also, with Joanna, we look through the eyes of the future. Look through back at us through our descendants. She has a beautiful book called, well, she has many beautiful books. One, Lover, The World as Lover, World as Self, teaches us that it's a reciprocal process, that as we go to heal the world, the lessons that we get to absorb, begin to heal us and wake us up. So it's this reciprocal process of becoming solid, stable, open, stretching to the pain, seeing with new eyes, and then going forth and growing to the point where we feel such gratitude. And then we see deeper into the pain. And it goes round and round. And it makes our life worth living because it's bigger than us. And when we get older, it isn't so great to think about what will we be doing next year, necessarily. So, how are we contributing to next year is a different thing. I just look down at my notes and I see the lines from yesterday's song. Love is a paintbrush, and life is the greatest art. And so this cycle of the work that reconnects is the greatest art. That we learn each of those parts, and each part buoys up the part before it, or the part after it. If you look at trauma healing, EMDR, tapping, cognitive behavioral therapy, what's ACT, acceptance. All of these have the same trajectory as Joanna's work on an individual level. They start out with making sure you're solid, and then being able to dip into the pain. And then once you do that, you get a bigger perspective. So on an individual level and on a collective level, it's all the same process. And it's even the same process in classical music, where you have the first movement of a symphony is kind of light and uplifting, and then the adagio gets like heavy duty, and then it starts coming out, and there's this tremendous celebration at the end. So this seems like some kind of truth, this thread that goes through life. Mm-hmm. Brian Stevenson, how many of you either read the book or saw the movie Just Mercy? Well, you've all got a treat in store. Brian Stevenson is an African-American lawyer who is married to his work. And his work is to free wrongly incarcerated people on death row and children incarcerated as adults. And he has done incredible work to create some more social equity in our country. And he has the same trajectory. He talks about getting intimate and how messy that is. So that we have to learn to handle messy. We have to learn to become comfortable with discomfort. That's widening our window. And that's a tough one. because our culture is so addicted to comfort. Our economy is based on comfort. And then he says, you have to look at your narratives and you have to figure out how to drop them. That's like widening our view. But we have to notice what the narratives are. And reevaluation counseling has some interesting things to say about different subgroups of our culture, different religions, different socio-economic niches in our culture, that each of us has some theme that we have to get over, some narrative that we need to drop. We could just look at the narrative of, morning practice period is sit, walk, sit. And what is it like when we don't do that? How wedded are we to it? Why are we wedded to it? That's just something that maybe all of us have a similar experience about. But we've got narratives about everything. We've got narratives about who you are by how you look, or what your education is, or what your housing is like, who has wisdom and who doesn't, who should have power, why do people have power, who's entitled. And so it's really important to be able to unpack those. When I was little, I shared a bedroom with my grandmother, the grandmother who escaped the pogroms. And in our closet, she had a little white and blue box. Nancy has one. And every day she would put a little money in that little blue box. And when the little blue box was full, she would send the money to Israel in gratitude. And what she was told that they were going to plant trees in Israel. And there would be beautiful forests. It would be the land of milk and honey. So fast forward some 70 years, and I was on a train going from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem with a young practitioner who was being my assistant in doing some training, secular training of these kinds of tools. And we were passing by this lush forest. And I said to her, my grandmother probably planted some of those trees. And it was a tender moment. And she said, those forests were planted on the rubble of Arab villages so that they could never return. And I couldn't stand that. My narrative was so deep. And I wasn't even fond of Israel at the time. But that was my grandma. I couldn't let go of that. So I had to research it. Who funded it? Where were they? All that. And the deeper I looked, the darker it got. That was a hard one to drop. And I've been dropping those narratives for a long time. And there's still parts of them that are so painful. There are little pieces of them that get pushed all the time. Same thing has happened when I've really dug deeper into the racism of our country. I remember redlining as a little girl, the early 50s. The gossip on the street of black people might be moving in, and it will lower the value of our property. And my parents had just barely gotten their first little tiny house. And I didn't think anything of it. That was normal. Same thing with all the TV shows. Oh my God. And even though my parents were very liberal and I never heard anything bad said about black people, it was in there when I started looking. So it's a job. You have to have some guts to drop your narratives. But you can bet that they'll be pointed out to you when your buttons get pushed. You can ask, oh, do I have a narrative here? And what is it? What am I telling myself? And your body can remember. You get in tune with your body, and it will help you out. And you don't have to do everything, because that's a whole progressive culture that's heading towards ADD. Take something that you're passionate about and dig deeper in it. Because no matter what it is in this world, it's going to have some difficulties. And so put your energy into what you really, really care about. Because that's what's going to carry you through the pain of learning. And it's going to energize you to be curious and to keep digging. And you do it with other people. It's so much better to have Sangha eyes. And you can create a Sangha anywhere. You don't have to be Buddhist. You can start slipping in little ideas without jargon. And you don't have to have it all together. If you're not very organized, make sure you've got somebody on your team who's organized. If you're a grunt worker, celebrate it. Line up with somebody who needs some grunt. You don't have to be brilliant. Or, I was determined to, on my first trip to Israel, I was determined not to go back until I had something to offer. And that's when I stumbled on this work. And I tried it out in my community first. And then I ventured into the Latino community with it. And then I was ready to go back to Israel. And I got the idea, and I told all my friends, hey, would you contribute to this? And a friend of mine said, oh, I know somebody in San Diego that might be interested. And she gave me $10,000. And so I went to Israel for 3 months. And on that 3-month trip, I was way overpacked. I had so much junk with me, oh my God. But I was schlepping it around in Haifa on a holiday, and in Israel on a Jewish holiday, everything is closed. And I wanted to go into the sea to get cool. And so I needed a place to drop my things. And so I went from one little store to another that was open, because the Arab stores, the Palestinian stores stay open. It's a good deal for both communities. And Haifa is the most integrated of all the big cities in Israel. So I was in this little fruit market, and I was saying, do you know where I could leave my bags for the day? Because I had a meeting in the evening. And this young woman said, oh, come with me to my house, and you can leave it with my mother. And so she walked me around the corner. And her mother was there entertaining a guest, but Palestinians have the very most fundamental hospitality foundation. Oh my goodness. So there I was drinking tea and coffee and little cakes, and they both spoke English, and they gave me their entire history of their family through 1948. And we were enjoying the time together, and the guest said, well, you know, I came for a purpose. We're going to learn how to make stuffed stomachs. And I said, can I help? And so we proceeded into the kitchen, where we cut up this enormous cow stomach and sewed them into little pouches, which we stuffed with baby lambs. And we continued having our conversation. The guest was the director of a large community center in the Arab neighborhood known as Halisa, which is rife with domestic violence and organized crime. And every day there's a murder in the street. Arab on Arab, intergenerational trauma. And in the afternoon, I was training her staff in this work. And we really hit it off. And I made a plan with her to come back and to do a whole training for that neighborhood. So many thousands of people. And then she got pregnant, and she wasn't young, and she went on long-term bed rest, and we just kind of hung it up. And the baby was born, and it was compromised, and she had to get through that. And the minute she got through it, she called me, and she said, okay, I'm ready. And so the woman who gave me the 10,000 gave me another 15. And it was enough to spend 3 more months in Israel doing this work. A month in Halisa. And then those people, several of them, we were able to bring them to the United States to become trainers. And then they went back to Halisa, and they're still doing it. And now they're dealing with the aftermath of October 7th, and it's really serving them. And they're by no means perfect. There's a crack in them, just like there's a crack in all of us. But their light is coming out. And I didn't plan any of that. It took on a life of its own. You have to be watching for where get in front of the wave. Be brave. Be ready. And don't be impulsive. This week is the end of the month of Elul on the Hebrew calendar. It's a month of cleaning up our dirty laundry for the past year. It's a very important practice. And then we have the birth of the new year, the birth of the world, in which we get an opportunity to do some more healing of the world. And our direction is that we cannot do it all. But just because we can't do it all doesn't absent us from the obligation to do something. And we can almost always do more. Sometimes the doing more is just kind words of support of people who are doing good. You have to feel whether that's really satisfying or just kind of taking the edge off. We don't have to be perfect. We have the mindfulness trainings to guide us and our practice to deepen those neural pathways so that the mindfulness trainings come more automatically all the time. And we have our common biology to really juice us. Spend time being intimate with your friends. So I want to read a poem. It's by a poet, a Puerto Rican Jewish poet named Aurora Levens Morales. And it's for the new year. May we have a sweet year of struggle. May we sing and hear our voices multiplied. May we find the deep roots of courage in love and feel it rise in us like sweet maple sap, simmered in the heat of this hard work, the remaking of the world, until joy sugars our days. Just as honey is made in the collective of shimmering wings and sunshine, grains of pollen gathered by many, sin prisa, sin pausa, no hurry, no stopping. Let the joining of hands and hearts seep from the many compartments of the comb in a pool of liquid gold, and may the honey of our endeavors drip, slow and delicious, onto our tongues. May we have a sweet year of struggle. May our losses fertilize the fields into a bumper crop of blossom. May the squashes flower and bear rich fruit. May tomatoes and melons blush into flavor. May we all have suffered, may all that we have suffered turn into soil. May a million mushrooms rise from the broken places and make medicine for our wounding. May sunflowers clean the earth. May we embrace the biggest challenges we have ever faced. Draw them close, find their cracks, and infiltrate like spores, like tiny seeds, like moss. May we turn our face to the sun and let hard times ripen us until we are bursting with juice, until we are blackberries among thorns. May we have a sweet year of struggle.